Mira lay on her side of the bed, facing the cracked wall. Behind her, Dayo's back pressed against hers like a cold stone. They shared the same narrow mattress, the same leaking roof, the same small room. But they no longer shared the same heart. The silence between them was heavy, thick like smoke. Mira could feel Dayo's breathing, steady and distant. She wondered if he could feel her tears soaking into the pillow. Once, this bed was their sanctuary. They would lie here dreaming about the future, laughing about small things, planning how they would rise together. But now, the bed felt like a battlefield. Every night, they turned their backs to each other, like enemies forced to share space. Dayo shifted slightly, and Mira held her breath. She hoped he would say something, anything. But he didn't. Instead, he muttered under his breath, just loud enough for her to hear. "You've changed. Or maybe you never mattered." The words stabbed her chest. Mira squeezed her eyes shut, biting her lip to stop herself from crying out loud. She wanted to scream, to ask him why. But she stayed silent. Outside, the rain began to fall, dripping through the holes in the roof. Mira couldn't sleep. Her mind drifted back to better days, back when everything was different. She remembered the first time they lay on this bed together. It was old even then, donated by a neighbor who pitied them. But to Mira and Dayo, it was a throne. They would stay up late, sharing one plate of rice, dreaming out loud. Dayo would talk about becoming a great engineer. Mira would talk about finishing school and opening a small business. "We'll make it together," Dayo always said, squeezing her hand. "You and me, Mira, no matter what." And she believed him. She believed him so much that when her mother fell sick and couldn't pay Mira's school fees, Mira dropped out. She took 3 cleaning jobs just to help Dayo finish his applications. She never told him how many nights she went hungry so he could eat. She never mentioned the times she pawned her small jewelry to pay for his transport to interviews. Back then, love felt like enough. But now, lying here in the same bed, Mira wondered if love had ever been enough at all. Her phone buzzed on the floor. A message appeared. "Final notice, tuition debt overdue." Dayo stood in front of the tall glass building, adjusting his new tie. His heart raced with excitement. Today was his first day at the prestigious engineering firm, the same company that rejected him 3 times before. But this time, he made it. He was finally here. Inside, the office was beautiful. Polished floors, air conditioning, elegant chairs. His colleagues were well-dressed, confident, speaking in polished English. Dayo felt like he had entered a different world. His mentor, Mr. Adeyemi, shook his hand firmly. "Welcome, Dayo. We've heard great things about you. Work hard and you'll go far." Dayo smiled wide. "Thank you, sir. I won't disappoint you." During lunch, his new colleagues invited him to join them. They talked about cars, vacation plans, and expensive restaurants. Dayo laughed along, trying to fit in. Then one of them asked casually, "So, Dayo, where does your family live?" Dayo hesitated. He thought of the leaking roof, the narrow bed, Mira's tired face. We live in a quiet area," he said vaguely. Another colleague smirked. "Quiet area? That's nice. And your girlfriend, what does she do?" Dayo's throat tightened. She's working on things." Someone whispered loud enough for him to hear. "Why is she still in your life?" Mira woke up before the sun. She always did. Sleep was a luxury she couldn't afford. She moved quietly around the small room, careful not to wake Dayo. She folded the thin blanket, swept the floor, and started preparing his breakfast. Rice and eggs. Simple but warm. After cooking, she quickly dressed in her worn uniform and slipped out of the house. Her first job started at 6 in the morning, cleaning offices in the city. By noon, she was exhausted, but she couldn't stop. She had a second job at a local restaurant, washing dishes and serving customers. Her hands were rough, her back ached, but she kept going. At night, she attended classes at a community school. She was determined to finish her education, even if it took years. Nobody knew how hard she worked. Dayo never asked. He just assumed she was getting by. When Mira returned home that evening, she was so tired she could barely stand. She began cooking dinner, but halfway through, her vision blurred. She gripped the counter, breathing heavily. Her legs wobbled, and for a moment, everything went dark. She collapsed silently onto the kitchen floor. Dayo was in the next room, scrolling through his phone, laughing at something. He didn't hear her fall. 2 weeks later, Dayo's colleagues invited him to a rooftop party. It was a celebration for new employees, a chance to network and impress the bosses. Dayo was excited. He wore his best shirt and polished his shoes until they shined. Mira wanted to support him. Even though she was tired, even though he had been cold to her lately, she still cared. She decided to bring homemade snacks, small meat pies she made herself. When she arrived at the party, she felt out of place immediately. Everyone was dressed in expensive clothes, holding wine glasses, speaking in loud, confident voices. Mira walked quietly to where Dayo stood with his colleagues. She smiled shyly and held out the tray. "I made these for you," she said softly. Dayo's face went stiff. His colleagues looked at the tray, then at Mira, then at each other. One of them chuckled. "Homemade snacks. How traditional." Another whispered loud enough for Mira to hear, "Is this what he's been hiding?" Dayo forced a nervous smile. He didn't defend her. He didn't say a word. Mira stood there, humiliated, her hands trembling as she held the tray. After a long silence, she quietly set the tray down and walked away, her eyes burning with tears. When they got home that night, Dayo was silent. Mira went straight to the kitchen, trying to calm herself. She washed the few dishes left in the sink, her hands shaking. Dayo woke in and frowned. "Why didn't you finish washing these this morning?" Mira turned slowly. "I was rushed. I had to leave early for work." "You're always making excuses. You can't even keep the house clean properly. It's embarrassing." Mira's chest tightened. She wanted to shout, to remind him that she had collapsed in this very kitchen just days ago, but she stayed quiet. Dayo grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge and walked out without another word. Mira stood there alone, gripping the edge of the sink. Her tears finally fell, hot and silent. She thought about the girl she used to be, the one who believed love could survive anything. Now, she wasn't so sure. That night, they lay in bed again, backs to each other. Mira clenched her fist under the blanket, her whole body tense. She whispered to herself in the darkness, "How much longer can I endure this?" Days turned into weeks, and Dayo grew more distant. He spent most of his evenings out with colleagues, attending dinners and parties. He came home late, smelling of cologne and laughter that didn't belong to Mira. Mira's loneliness grew like a shadow. She tried to reach him, asking about his day, offering to cook his favorite meals, but Dayo barely responded. One evening, she sat on the bed with a small notebook, writing quietly. It was her journal, the only place where she could pour out her heart. She wrote about the sacrifices she made, the nights she went hungry, the times she pawned her mother's ring just to help him. She wrote about how much she loved him, even now, even when he treated her like a stranger. Tears stained the pages as she wrote, "I wonder if he remembers the girl who believed in him when no one else did." Dayo came home late again that night. He didn't notice Mira sitting in the corner, didn't see the journal in her lap. He didn't even remember it was their anniversary. Mira closed the journal slowly, her heart breaking piece by piece. She whispered to the empty room, "He forgot." At the office, Dayo's confidence grew. His mentor praised him often, and his colleagues invited him everywhere. He felt like he finally belonged. One afternoon, a female colleague named Toyin approached him during lunch. She was beautiful, well-spoken, and came from a wealthy family. "Dayo, you're doing so well," she said, smiling. "You have so much potential." Dayo blushed. "Thank you. I'm just trying my best." Toyin leaned closer. "You know, I've noticed you seem distracted sometimes. Is everything okay at home?" Dayo hesitated. "It's nothing, just small issues." Toyin tilted her head. "If I don't mind me saying, sometimes the people we keep around us can hold us back. You deserve someone who matches your ambition." Dayo laughed nervously, but the words stuck in his mind. Later, another colleague joined the conversation. "Honestly, Dayo, you've outgrown that life. You need someone who fits your level now." Dayo didn't say anything. He just nodded slowly, feeling conflicted. At home that evening, Mira was in the kitchen preparing dinner. She overheard Dayo on the phone laughing with someone. "Yeah, I know. Things will change soon." Mira's heart sank. She gripped the spoon tightly, pretending she didn't hear. Mira's body was failing her. She felt dizzy often, her hands trembled, and she had trouble catching her breath. But she ignored the signs. She couldn't afford to be weak. One afternoon at work, while scrubbing floors, her vision blurred. She tried to stand, but her legs gave out. She collapsed hard onto the cold tiles. A neighbor who worked nearby found her and rushed her to a small clinic. The doctor examined her, carefully, frowning as he checked her pulse. "How long have you been feeling like this?" Mira shook her head weakly. I don't know, a few weeks maybe." The doctor sighed. "You're severely exhausted. Your body is shutting down. I need to run some tests immediately." Mira's heart raced. "Tests? I don't have money for that." "This is serious," the doctor said firmly. "If you don't take care of yourself, you could collapse again, and next time might be worse." Mira nodded slowly, fear creeping into her chest. When she got home, she didn't tell Dayo. She didn't want to burden him. But the doctor's words echoed in her mind. Next time might be worse. Dayo noticed Mira coming home later than usual. She looked tired, thinner, and distant. But instead of asking if she was okay, he assumed the worst. "You're avoiding me, aren't you?" he said one evening. Mira looked up, confused. "What? No, I've been busy."
"Busy with what?" Dayo snapped. "You don't even have a real job." Mira's eyes filled with tears, but she said nothing. Dayo shook his head. "I don't even know who you are anymore." That night, he began locking himself in the small side room, claiming he needed space to work. But Mira knew the truth. He just didn't want to be near her. The gap between them grew wider. They barely spoke. They barely looked at each other. Mira felt like a ghost in her own home, invisible and unwanted. She sat alone on the bed one night, staring at the door Dayo had locked. She whispered to herself, "How did we become strangers?" Outside, the rain fell again, drumming against the roof. And inside, their love continued to drown in silence. One morning, Mira received a phone call from an unfamiliar number. She answered hesitantly. "Hello, is this Mira?" a gentle voice asked. Yes, who is this? My name is Mrs. Adeola. I was your teacher years ago. Do you remember me? Mira's heart warmed. Yes, Ma, I remember. Mrs. Adeola continued. I heard about your situation. I know you've been struggling to pay your tuition and medical bills. I want to help you. Mira gasped. Ma, I can't accept that. You can and you will, Mrs. Adeola said firmly. You've always been a good student, Mira. Don't let life break you. I've already arranged for your fees to be covered anonymously. Tears streamed down Mira's face. Thank you, Ma. Thank you so much. After the call, Mira felt a flicker of hope for the first time in months. She wasn't completely alone. Someone still believed in her. A few days later, she received another call. This time, it was from a community organization. Congratulations, Mira. You've been selected to receive an award for resilience in leadership. Mira was stunned. An award? For me? Yes, the ceremony is next week. We hope you can attend. Mira smiled through her tears. I will. Thank you. Mama Kemi, their neighbor, had been watching Mira for weeks. She noticed how early Mira woke up, how late she returned home, and how quietly she suffered. One evening, Mama Kemi stood outside their door, listening. She heard Dayo's harsh voice blaming Mira for small things. She heard Mira's silence. Mama Kemi shook her head sadly. That girl is a saint, she whispered to herself. She began recording small moments. Mira helping an elderly neighbor carry groceries, Mira giving her last few coins to a child begging on the street, Mira working tirelessly, never complaining. One day, Mama Kemi approached Mira. My daughter, I see you. I see everything you do. One day, the world will see it too. Mira smiled weakly. Thank you, Ma. Mama Kemi nodded. That boy doesn't know what he has, but he will learn. Trust me, he will learn. Mira didn't understand what she meant, but the words gave her comfort. Later that week, Mama Kemi posted a video online. It was a compilation of Mira's quiet acts of kindness with a simple caption. This is what real strength looks like. The video began to spread slowly, shared by people who recognized true resilience when they saw it. Dayo noticed something different about Mira. She seemed calmer, more confident. She dressed a little better, spoke a little louder. But instead of being happy for her, Dayo felt threatened. What's going on with you? He asked one evening, his tone suspicious. Mira looked at him calmly. Nothing. I'm just trying to take care of myself. Dayo frowned. You're acting like you're better than me now. Mira sighed. I never said that, Dayo. You don't have to say it, he snapped. I can see it. He stormed into the side room and slammed the door. Later that night, Dayo found an old gift Mira had given him years ago, a small handmade bracelet. He stared at it for a moment, then threw it into the trash. It was his way of cutting ties with the past, with the version of himself that once needed her. But deep down, guilt gnawed at him. He just couldn't admit it yet. Mira couldn't take it anymore. The coldness, the insults, the silent treatments, it was too much. One evening, she confronted him. Dayo, why do you hate me so much? She asked, her voice trembling. Dayo turned, his face hard. I don't hate you. I can't do this anymore. Do what? Mira asked, tears streaming down her face. I've given you everything. I sacrificed my education, my health, my future. For you. Dayo laughed bitterly. Sacrificed. You act like I forced you to do those things. You chose to stay. That's on you. Mira's heart shattered. You really believe that? Yes.
Dayo said coldly. I've been holding you back, Mira. I'm finally moving forward, and you can't handle it. Mira stepped back, her whole body shaking. She looked at the man she once loved and saw a stranger. Without another word, she walked to the corner of the room and picked up a small bag. She had packed it days ago, just in case. She placed it near the door. Dayo watched her, his jaw tight. What are you doing? Mira didn't answer. She just turned and walked to the bed, lying down with her back to him. That night, the silence was heavier than ever. Mira's best friend, Bola, came to visit. She noticed Mira's sadness immediately. What's wrong? Bola asked gently. Nothing, I'm fine. Bola shook her head. Don't lie to me, Mira. I know you. Slowly, Mira broke down. She told Bola everything. The coldness, the insults, the silent treatments. It was too much. Bola listened, her face growing angrier with every word. That boy is a fool, Bola said finally. Does he even know what you've done for him? Mira wiped her tears. He doesn't care. Bola leaned forward. Mira, does he know you've been paying for his extra classes, the ones he thinks are covered by a scholarship? Mira's eyes widened. How do you know that? Bola smiled sadly. I went through your receipts when you asked me to help you organize your papers. You've been funding his entire career. Mira looked down, ashamed. I didn't want him to know. He would feel bad. Bola grabbed her hand. He should feel bad. He owes you everything. Don't tell him, Mira begged. Please. Bola sighed. One day he will find out. And when he does, he'll regret everything. Dayo's pride was at its peak. He walked into the office every day feeling untouchable. But pride has a way of setting traps. One afternoon, during a meeting, his mentor, Mr. Adeyemi, asked him a question about a project. Dayo froze. He realized he hadn't prepared properly. He stammered, trying to come up with an answer. One of his colleagues whispered loud enough for others to hear, I thought he was supposed to be brilliant. Another added, maybe someone else did the work for him. Dayo's face burned with shame. He sat down quickly, avoiding eye contact. After the meeting, Mr. Adeyemi pulled him aside. Dayo, you need to focus. Don't let success make you careless. Dayo nodded, embarrassed. But the worst came later. During lunch, Toyin mentioned casually, You know, Dayo, I heard your girlfriend is the one who's been supporting you financially.
Dayo's heart stopped. What? That's not true. Toyin raised an eyebrow. Really? Because someone said she's been paying for your classes. Dayo felt the room spin. He excused himself quickly and walked out, his chest tight with panic. For the first time, doubt crept into his mind. Could it be true? The next morning, Dayo received a call from an unknown number. Hello, is this Mr. Dayo? A calm voice asked. Yes, who is this? I'm Dr. Chukwu from City Clinic. I'm calling about Mira. Dayo's heart dropped. What happened? Is she okay? She's stable now, but we need you to come in. There are some test results we need to discuss with you. Dayo's hands trembled. I'll be there. When he arrived at the clinic, the doctor led him into a small office. On the desk was a thick file with Mira's name on it. Mr. Dayo, Mira has been suffering from severe exhaustion and malnutrition. Her body has been under extreme stress for months. Dayo's throat tightened. Months? The doctor nodded. She's been pushing herself beyond her limits. If she continues like this, it could be life-threatening. Dayo's world tilted. Why didn't she tell me? The doctor looked at him carefully. Perhaps she didn't think you would listen. Dayo sat in silence, the weight of guilt crushing him. The doctor handed him the file. There's more. You should read this. Dayo opened it slowly, his hands shaking, and as he read, everything he thought he knew began to crumble. That evening, Mira collapsed again. This time, it was worse. Dayo found her lying on the kitchen floor, unconscious. Panic seized him. He called an ambulance, his hands shaking so badly he could barely dial. At the hospital, doctors rushed her into emergency care. Dayo paced outside the room, his mind racing. All he could think about was the doctor's report, the truth he had been too blind to see. Hours later, a nurse allowed him into the room. Mira lay on the bed, pale and fragile, connected to machines. Dayo sat beside her, tears streaming down his face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Mira. Later that night, unable to sleep, Dayo returned home. He searched the room and found Mira's journal hidden under the bed. He opened it slowly, and as he read her words, his heart broke. Every page was filled with love, sacrifice, and pain. She wrote about the night she went hungry so he could eat, the job she took to pay his fees, the time she cried herself to sleep because he ignored her. Dayo read aloud, his voice cracking. I wonder if he remembers the girl who believed in him when no one else did. He closed the journal and buried his face in his hands, sobbing. He had destroyed the one person who truly loved him. The next morning, Dayo returned to the hospital. Mira was awake, staring at the ceiling. When she saw him, her expression was cold. Why are you here? She asked quietly. Dayo knelt beside her bed. Mira, I read your journal. I know everything now. Mira's eyes filled with tears. You had no right to read that. I know, Dayo said, his voice breaking. But I'm glad I did. Because now I understand. I understand how blind I've been. He reached for her hand, but Mira pulled away. Words are easy, Dayo. You've hurt me too many times. Dayo nodded, tears falling freely. I know. And I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know I'm sorry. For everything. Mira turned her face away, her heart torn between love and pain. Before Dayo could say more, Mira's phone rang. She answered weakly. Hello, Mira. This is the committee calling to congratulate you. You've been selected for the Community Resilience Award. We'll be honoring you next week. Mira's eyes widened. Thank you. When she hung up, Dayo stared at her in shock. You won an award? Mira nodded slowly, saying nothing. The award ceremony was held in a small community hall. It was simple but meaningful. Mira arrived wearing a modest dress, her face calm but still tired. Dayo followed quietly, feeling out of place. When Mira's name was called, the room erupted in applause. Mira walked to the stage slowly, her head held high. The host spoke warmly. Mira has shown extraordinary resilience, working multiple jobs, pursuing her education, and helping others despite her own struggles. She is a true example of strength and humility. The audience clapped louder. Dayo watched from the back, his chest tight with shame and pride. After the ceremony, several people approached Mira, congratulating her. One of Dayo's colleagues from the office was there too. He walked up to Dayo and whispered, So this is the woman you've been hiding. She did all this for you? Dayo couldn't answer. He just nodded, his throat tight. Later that walking home together, Dayo spoke softly. Mira, I was wrong. About everything. Mira didn't respond. She just kept walking, her eyes fixed ahead. Dayo realized words alone wouldn't fix this. He needed to show her, not just tell her. And for the first time in months, he was ready to do the work. Days later, Dayo requested a meeting with his colleagues and mentor at the office. Everyone gathered in the conference room, confused about why Dayo had called them. Dayo stood at the front, his hands trembling slightly. He took a deep breath. "I need to say something," he began. "I've been lying to you all, not with words, but with silence." The room grew quiet. "You all think I got here on my own, that I'm self-made. But that's not true." His voice cracked. "The woman you saw at the party, the one some of you mocked, she's the reason I'm here." Mr. Adeyemi leaned forward, listening carefully. "Mira sacrificed everything for me. She paid for my classes, my transport, my food. She worked 3 jobs while I chased my dreams. And I repaid her with coldness and shame. I was too proud to admit that I needed her, but the truth is, without Mira, I'd be nothing." The room was silent. Some people looked down ashamed. Others nodded slowly, understanding. Mr. Adeyemi spoke gently. "Thank you for being honest, Dayo. That takes courage."
Dayo nodded, wiping his face, but he knew this was just the beginning. The report detailed Mira's condition: severe malnutrition, chronic fatigue, stress-induced illness. It also included a note from the doctor. Patient has been neglecting her health for months, prioritizing others over herself. Continued stress could lead to permanent damage or worse. Dale's hands shook. He realized how close he had come to losing her, not just emotionally, but physically. He remembered the nights he ignored her, the times he mocked her, the moments he made her feel small. And now, staring at the report, he saw the cost of his pride. He whispered to himself, "I almost killed her." That evening, he went to Mira's bedside. She was resting at home now, still weak but recovering. "Mira," he said quietly, "I saw the full report. I understand now. You were dying, and I didn't even notice." Mira looked at him, her eyes tired but soft. "I didn't want to burden you, Dayo." "Burden me?" Dayo's voice broke. "I've never been a burden. I was just too selfish to see it." He knelt beside her. "I don't deserve you, but I want to try. Please, let me try." The next week, Dayo stood in front of their small apartment building. Neighbors had gathered for a community meeting. Mama Kemi had organized it, and she invited Dayo to speak. "I know many of you have seen how I've treated Mira," Dayo began, his voice humble. "I was wrong. I let success make me proud and cruel." He looked at Mira, who stood quietly in the crowd. "Mira is the strongest person I know. She gave me everything, and I gave her nothing but pain." He turned to the neighbors. "I'm saying this publicly because I need you all to hold me accountable. I'm going to be better, not just for her, but for myself." The crowd was silent at first. Then, slowly, Mama Kemi began to clap. Others joined, and soon the whole crowd was applauding. Mira's eyes filled with tears, not because everything was fixed, but because for the first time, Dayo was choosing humility over pride. After the gathering, Dayo walked up to her. "I know I have a long way to go," he said softly, "but I'm not giving up." Mira nodded slowly. "I need time, Dayo. I need to see change, not just hear promises." "I understand," Dayo said, "and I'll wait as long as it takes." Over the next few weeks, karma quietly delivered its justice. At work, Dayo was passed over for a promotion. His mentor explained, "You have the skills, Dayo, but leadership requires character. Work on that first." Dayo nodded, accepting the truth. Meanwhile, word spread about Mira's resilience. A local business owner offered her a better job with fair pay and respect. Mira accepted gratefully. People in the community began to recognize her, greeting her warmly on the street. "That's Lyra," they would say. "She's the one who never gave up." Dayo watched as Mira's reputation grew, while his own image became humbled. One evening, he approached her nervously. "Mira, I need your help." She looked at him, surprised. "With what?" "I've been struggling at work," he admitted. "I realized I don't know how to manage things on my own. You've always been good at organizing and planning. Can you teach me?" She studied his face. For the first time, she saw genuine humility. "Okay," she said softly, "I'll help you." It was a small moment, but it marked a shift. Dayo was no longer the proud man who refused to need her. He was learning to value her again. And slowly, trust began to grow. Months passed. The small room with the leaking roof remained the same, but the people inside had changed. Mira and Dayo no longer turned their backs to each other at night. Now they lay side by side, sometimes talking, sometimes just holding hands in comfortable silence. Dayo had kept his promise. He helped with chores, respected her work, and listened when she spoke. He was learning, slowly, what it meant to truly love someone. One evening, Mira lit a small candle and placed it on the table beside the bed. The room glowed softly in the warm light. Dayo joined her, sitting quietly. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" Mira asked. "For not giving up on me. Even when I gave you every reason not to." Mira smiled gently. "I almost did, but I realized something. Love isn't just about staying. It's also about knowing when to demand better." Dayo nodded. "And I'm grateful you did." They sat together in the candlelight, the rain falling gently outside. The roof still leaked, but somehow it didn't matter as much anymore. Because the bed that once felt like a battlefield now felt like home again. And in the quiet warmth of that small room, two people who had once treated each other like enemies were learning, slowly but surely, to become partners again. If you enjoyed our story, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Thank you.